There is a quiet but heavy burden carried by many women who have been told, implicitly or directly, that asking for respect is asking for too much. Simple, fundamental requests. Call me if you'll be late, listen without cutting me off, be clear about your intentions, are often received not with understanding, but with irritation. Instead of being recognized as the foundation of any healthy relationship, these requests are turned back on the woman, reframed as complaints, accusations, or evidence of being demanding. What should be the minimum in love is treated as though it were an excessive luxury. The tragedy is not that she is asking for too much, but that he is offering too little. Carl Jung's psychology gives us language for this. He described the shadow as the part of the psyche that resists responsibility, preferring to project weakness onto others. When a man is confronted with a woman's boundary or request for consistency, it stirs his shadow. Rather than acknowledging his immaturity, he pushes back by labeling her as unreasonable. He may say, "You're never satisfied," when in truth what unsettles him is the mirror of his own unreliability. The demand is not in her words, but in what her words expose. That love without respect is no love at all. Daily life offers endless examples of this distortion. A woman asks not to be dismissed when she speaks, only to be told she is too sensitive. Another asks for clarity about the direction of the relationship and is accused of pressuring or being impatient. A third expects shared responsibility in household matters, and instead of partnership, she receives silence or sarcasm. These moments reveal a pattern. The minimum is mislabeled as excessive whenever a man is unwilling to confront his own lack of maturity. Yet her clarity does not create the problem. It simply reveals what was already present. The psychological effect of this dynamic on women is profound. Over time, many learn to silence themselves to preserve peace. They soften requests, add endless justifications, or avoid speaking at all. The cost is heavy. They carry resentment, exhaustion, and a growing sense of invisibility. They begin to ask themselves, "Am I being unfair? Am I asking too much?" But the truth is that they are not asking for extravagance. They are asking for what should be the baseline of mature love, honesty, presence, and reciprocity. To doubt these needs is to doubt one's own dignity. Jung's idea of individuation offers a path forward. Individuation is the process of becoming whole by listening to the inner voice rather than silencing it for approval. For a woman in midlife or beyond, individuation often means reclaiming what was sacrificed in younger years. The right to speak needs allowed without apology. To say, "I expect you to be truthful," or "I will not accept indifference," is not arrogance. It is alignment with the deeper self. Each time she validates her own needs, she takes back fragments of herself that were surrendered to the fear of being too much. This is why validating needs must never be mistaken for caprice. When a woman names what she requires, she is not playing games. She is honoring her essence. A request for respect is not a whim, but a declaration of self-worth. The more firmly she roots herself in this truth, the less likely she is to confuse resistance from others with evidence of her own flaw. His inability to meet her need does not make the need excessive. It makes the relationship insufficient. The cultural narrative, however, often teaches the opposite. Women, especially as they age, are told to be grateful for companionship, to lower expectations, so as not to be alone. They are reminded of scarcity, warned that maturity narrows options. Yet companionship without respect is not security. It is loneliness disguised as partnership. It is a half-life, where presence is traded for peace at the expense of dignity. What is gained by settling is far less than what is lost: authenticity, clarity, and self-respect. Consider the emotional relief that comes when a woman stops apologizing for wanting the minimum. No longer does she stretch herself to accept crumbs of affection or silence. in place of presence. She learns that solitude with dignity is preferable to togetherness without respect. Her worth is no longer tethered to someone else's willingness to rise to maturity. She becomes, instead, the guardian of her own peace. The paradox is that the clearer she is about the minimum, the more respect she commands. Men who are prepared for mature love recognize these boundaries not as obstacles, but as signs of strength. They see that her clarity protects not only her, but also the relationship itself. Those who are unprepared may leave, but their departure is not a loss. It is a filter. By naming what she needs, she spares herself years of frustration with someone who could never offer it. In this sense, clarity becomes a form of mercy. Jung's insights remind us that authentic love grows only where both partners are willing to confront themselves. A woman who validates her needs offers the relationship a chance to stand on solid ground. If the man cannot accept that chance, he reveals his limitations, not hers. Mature love does not fear boundaries, it rests on them. It does not shrink from responsibility, it welcomes it as the very proof of devotion. The truth is simple. When a woman names her needs with calm assurance, she is not demanding, she is dignified. What she asks for is not extraordinary, it is the very soil in which real intimacy grows. To confuse respect with excess is to mistake immaturity for truth. But when she holds firm, she not only honors herself, she creates the only conditions under which love can truly flourish. To understand what it really means to ask for the minimum in love, it is important to strip away the illusions that culture has built around relationships. Many women have been told that love is sacrifice, that they must constantly prove devotion through endless patience and giving. But when the layers of romanticized struggle are removed, what remains is simple. The minimum is not a grand gesture, it is the foundation without which love cannot survive. Mature love does not thrive on drama, guessing games, or imbalance. It rests on four pillars that sustain dignity and connection. The first is presence. Emotional presence is more than being physically in the same room. It is showing up with genuine attention. It is listening without distraction, offering space for feelings to be expressed without being minimized. A man who cannot offer presence leaves his partner carrying the loneliness of doing the emotional work alone. Presence does not mean perfection. It means choosing to engage, to remain awake to the relationship, instead of retreating into silence or avoidance. The second is respect for limits and individuality. A woman who has lived through decades of compromise knows how destructive it is when her boundaries are dismissed. The minimum in mature love is recognition that each person has a self beyond the relationship. This means allowing space for solitude, friendships, and personal pursuits without interpreting them as threats. Jung would frame this as honoring individuation, the process by which each person becomes whole. Without boundaries, intimacy suffocates. With them, intimacy deepens because it is built on freedom rather than control. The third is reciprocity. Love cannot remain balanced if one gives endlessly while the other receives without reflection. Reciprocity is not a ledger of favors. It is the natural rhythm of giving and receiving in equal spirit. It is the awareness that affection, care, and effort must circulate between two people, not flow in one direction until exhaustion sets in. A relationship where reciprocity is missing quickly corrodes the self-worth of the one who overgives. But when reciprocity is present, it affirms equality. It whispers, "Your presence matters as much as mine. Your effort is seen. Your needs are honored." The fourth pillar is clarity. Mature love is not a guessing game of half-spoken intentions and ambiguous gestures. Clarity means communicating where the relationship stands and where it is heading. It is honesty about feelings, consistency in behavior, and commitment that does not vanish the moment difficulty arises. Too often, women are asked to settle for uncertainty, to live in the fog of almost relationships. But the minimum is transparency. Without it, the bond is built on illusion rather than truth. These four foundations, presence, respect, reciprocity, and clarity, are not luxuries to be earned. They are the soil in which any lasting connection must be rooted. Yet, because so many women have been conditioned to accept less, asking for them can feel like asking for the world. Culture has praised women for endurance, not for discernment. But endurance without dignity is not love. It is slow erosion. Everyday examples make this clear. A woman who asks her partner to listen without looking at his phone is not demanding. She is asking for presence. A woman who insists on an evening for herself is not selfish. She is protecting her individuality. A woman who notices that she gives constant affection and receives only indifference is not unreasonable when she asks for balance. She is asking for reciprocity. And a woman who asks where the relationship is headed is not rushing. She is seeking the clarity that mature love requires. Jung's perspective reveals that what we call the minimum is actually the natural expression of individuation within a bond. Two people who have met themselves honestly bring that honesty to each other. They do not fear presence, boundaries, equality, or clarity because they have learned to live with these within themselves. The ones who call these demands are those still resisting their own growth. The truth is that the minimum in mature love is not negotiable. It is not a bonus, it is the baseline. Without it, a woman carries the weight of an unequal bond. With it, she walks in dignity, knowing that her needs are not excessive, they are human. And when she refuses to settle for less, she does not push love away. She makes space for the only kind of love that deserves her. There is an important distinction between desiring care and being underestimated. Many women are told that to want tenderness, attention, or consistency is to be needy. Yet what they are asking for is not indulgence. It is recognition of their humanity. The tragedy is that culture often mislabels women who stand firmly for respect as difficult, while praising those who stay silent as easygoing. This distortion forces countless women into silence, believing that to speak their needs is to risk abandonment. But the silence costs more than any relationship ever could. It eats away at dignity, and over time, it convinces a woman that her voice is too heavy for others to carry. The psychological toll of silencing oneself is profound. Each unspoken boundary becomes a stone placed on the chest, pressing down with invisible weight. She learns to anticipate rejection before she even speaks, so she edits herself, softens her edges, and tries to be acceptable. Yet the result is not harmony. It is resentment. Jung would describe this as the fracture of the self, the split between the outer persona that complies and the inner essence that longs to be free. Individuation, the journey toward wholeness, demands that this fracture be healed. It requires the woman to reunite her inner truth with her outer voice, even if doing so risks losing those who only loved her silence. The archetype of the queen captures this reclamation of dignity. The queen does not apologize for needing respect. She sees it as the very air she breathes. Her value is not negotiable, and her essence cannot be traded for comfort. She knows that love built on the dismissal of her needs is not love, but dependency disguised as affection. The queen archetype is not about arrogance, but about sovereignty, the ability to rule her own life, to protect her inner territory, and to require that those who enter it honor what is sacred. Everyday signs reveal whether a man sees a woman's needs as priority or burden. When she shares her fatigue and he responds with empathy, he recognizes her humanity. When she expresses discomfort and he adjusts without mockery, he shows maturity. But when her needs are met with sighs, jokes, or accusations of being too much, the truth emerges. He does not see her as a partner, but as an accessory. The difference between these responses is not minor. It is the line that separates a bond rooted in equality from one destined to erode her essence. Culturally, women over 40 often face another layer of dismissal. They are told to be grateful for whatever companionship they can find, as though maturity means lowering the bar. But gratitude without respect is not love. It is resignation. A woman who has lived long enough to know the cost of silence can no longer afford to play small. She understands that to ask for the minimum is not to burden a man, but to reveal whether he is capable of mature love. The courage to stand in this truth reshapes everything. Instead of walking on eggshells, she walks in clarity. Instead of questioning whether she is too much, she asks whether he is enough. This reversal is not cruelty, it is justice. It is the restoration of balance after decades of imbalance. It is the refusal to confuse endurance with love, silence with harmony, or self-erasure with devotion. In practice, the difference between wanting care and being underestimated lies in tone. A woman who says, "I want to be heard," is not fragile, she is honoring herself. A woman who says, "I will not accept indifference," is not impossible, she is dignified. The culture may call this demanding, but Jung's psychology calls it individuation, the process of living in alignment with one's inner truth rather than bending to outer masks. The truth is clear. To desire respect, presence, and reciprocity is not to be needy. It is to be whole. The queen within every woman demands this recognition not as luxury, but as necessity. And when she claims it without apology, she ceases to be underestimated. She becomes unforgettable. When we talk about the minimum in mature love, we are not speaking of luxuries or fantasies. We are describing the essentials: respect, presence, reciprocity, and clarity. And yet, these essentials often serve as a silent test of masculine maturity. A man who has grown into himself, who has confronted his own fears and shadows, recognizes these basics without resistance. He does not hear a request for respect as a threat. He hears it as an invitation to build something lasting. For him, the minimum is not a demand, but the natural ground of partnership. But for others, those unprepared for responsibility, the same requests trigger defensiveness, avoidance, or even ridicule. The difference is not in the woman's voice, but in the man's readiness to listen. Carl Jung taught that the unconscious carries fears and insecurities that we project onto others. For many men, the clarity of a woman who knows her worth awakens the shadow, the unspoken fear of inadequacy, the worry that they cannot meet her standards. Instead of admitting this fear, they mask it with irony, coldness, or accusations of her being too demanding. In reality, her boundaries are not excessive. They simply expose whether he is prepared to meet love as an adult or whether he is still seeking comfort in imbalance. The paradox is striking. The clearer a woman is about her minimum, the faster she discovers who truly stands beside her. Instead of investing years in ambiguity, she filters out immaturity early. Her honesty does not push away love, it protects her from the illusion of it. Every no she speaks, every line she draws, acts as a compass. Men who are unready drift away, and while their departure may sting, it saves her from the heavier grief of betrayal later. Those who remain are drawn not despite her clarity, but because of it. They recognize that a relationship with her will not be built on confusion, but on mutual respect. This clarity, then, becomes one of the most powerful tools a woman can wield. It does not need to be delivered with anger or endless explanation. It can be spoken calmly as a simple truth. This is what I need to feel safe, to feel seen, to feel loved. Some men will call this too much, but the man who is whole enough to meet her knows that these words are not demands. They are the very conditions in which intimacy can flourish. The filter works quickly, sparing her the exhaustion of giving more than she receives. Practical examples bring this to life. A woman asks her partner to share responsibilities at home, not as a favor but as equality. The immature man laughs it off or delays. The mature man adjusts because he knows that partnership is shared labor. Another asks for clarity about the relationship, where it is headed, what his intentions are. The unprepared man calls it pressure. The prepared man answers honestly, even if his answer is imperfect, because he values truth over comfort. These moments show that the minimum is not negotiable. It is diagnostic. It reveals character, maturity, and readiness in ways words alone cannot. Psychologically, clarity also empowers the woman herself. By naming her needs without apology, she frees herself from the cycle of self-doubt. No longer does she wonder, "Am I being too much?" Instead, she asks, "Is he capable of enough?" This reversal of perspective is transformative. It protects her from carrying blame for someone else's unreadiness and places responsibility where it belongs, on the man who either rises to meet her or reveals that he cannot. Jung would see this process as individuation expressed in relationship. The woman, by standing firm in her truth, is not only protecting her peace but also catalyzing growth in those around her. The man who can withstand her clarity is pushed to confront his own shadow and mature. The one who cannot leaves, clearing space for authenticity. Either way, her boundaries serve a higher purpose. They keep her aligned with her essence and keep relationships honest. The lesson is simple. The minimum is never too much. It is the test that separates those who are ready for real love from those who are not. And the sooner this truth is spoken, the sooner the path to authentic connection opens. To hold firm to what you know is the minimum is not arrogance, and it is not stubbornness. It is alignment with the deepest truth of who you are. For too long, women have been told to compromise beyond measure, to soften their needs, to apologize for wanting reciprocity. But maturity brings a different understanding. Love that cannot meet the minimum will never sustain the maximum. To sustain your own measure is to choose dignity over illusion and peace over pretense. There is a quiet magnetism in a woman who does not apologize for her standards. She does not beg for consistency. She embodies it. She does not plead for honesty. She requires it. And in this steadiness, she draws respect without demanding it. Those who cannot meet her minimum drift away, and though their departure may ache, it clears the air. What remains are those who see her not as excessive, but as essential. Jung would describe this as individuation, when the self ceases to fracture for approval and begins to live in wholeness. The relief that comes with this stance is immense. No longer is she caught in endless negotiations, trading pieces of herself for fleeting affection. She no longer silences her voice in fear of being abandoned. Instead, she walks with the assurance that solitude with dignity is better than companionship without respect. Her value is not conditional on whether someone stays. It is grounded in her very being. Examples of women who live this truth illuminate its power. One, after years of excusing disrespect, finally spoke the words, "This is not enough for me." The relationship ended, but she later described the profound peace she felt, because even in loss, she had preserved herself. Another, widowed and pressured to remarry quickly, refused to settle for presence without partnership. She poured her energy into community work and found that love returned to her in forms deeper and truer than she had expected. Both women discovered that keeping the minimum was, in fact, the key to unlocking the maximum. Maximum respect, maximum clarity, maximum freedom. This is the paradox. When you stop lowering your measure, you stop attracting what is beneath it. The man who fears your standards was never capable of meeting them. The man who honors them was waiting for you to claim them. In this sense, your clarity becomes not only a protection, but also an invitation. The invitation for love to arrive as it should, reciprocal, respectful, mature. Jung reminds us that individuation is not selfishness, it is integration. To live in alignment with your essence is to stop betraying yourself for comfort. A woman who sustains her measure walks in wholeness. She no longer asks, "Am I too much?" but instead, "Does this honor who I am becoming?" And in that question, she discovers a deeper truth. Love does not diminish her essence, it affirms it. The truth is clear. Holding the minimum is not about asking for more, it is about refusing to live with less than what sustains the soul. And when you sustain that measure without apology, you do not push love away. You make space for the only love worth keeping.